What's up, all you doodles and doodlers out there, you schemers and dreamers, and welcome back to another episode of Doodle Talk. This is episode 35. Come on in, get comfy. I think we got a good one for you today. So have a seat right over there, and we'll be right there. We'll be right with you. Hey, yeah, how's it going? Hope everyone's doing well. I'm doing pretty good. Recording this one later than normal. It's actually like 7 p.m. at night, which is way later than when I normally record these. But it's so freaking hot nowadays, you know? It's just so hot nowadays. These days, it's so hot. If you want to go on a run, it's probably best to wait a little bit until the sun starts to go down. And that's just what I did. I went on a run a little while ago. Normally, I would just record it before. But I was feeling kind of lazy today. Had a slow start, slow morning. Went running later, and now we're recording this a little bit later at night, and it feels kind of weird, but it feels cool. Feels spooky, like I'm staying up past my bedtime. But yeah, besides that, doing pretty good. So this is coming out, right? So the order of these is changing a little bit. Not changing, but I recorded another podcast with Ryan the other day, and that was really fun. We had a great time, and sorry, just making sure I can hear myself. We had a great time, and that podcast we talked about a couple different things, kind of like the weirdness of like hustle culture and like hustle bros. And like kind of acknowledging that like people like Gary Vee or people who actually have worked really hard, like there are actually people like that, but then there are people who are just like kind of taking advantage of that and like scamming people or like selling a course on how to sell a course, kind of like pyramid schemey kind of stuff. We talked about that. We talked about some stuff in general. We talked about summertime in Japan. So it was overall just a good one. The first one we did was really focused, like hyper focused on like being an ALT English teacher in Japan and what it's like, and like should you move to Japan. This one is a lot more just like hanging out, catching up, and talking and stuff, and yeah, super fun. I actually am not 100% sure if that's going to be coming out next week or like the week after. I might save them for when I go to America, because next week, we've mentioned this before, but my buddy Jace is coming into town. He's in Japan already, but he'll be coming to my neck of the woods next week. We're going to meet up, and we're going to the Pokemon World Championships in Yokohama, which is awesome. And if you don't know, Yokohama is just like kind of it's part like a little bit southern part of Tokyo, closer to the bay. And yeah, I'm super excited for that, and hopefully we'll get a podcast in with Jace too. But yeah, looking forward to that. It's going to be lots of fun. And yeah, just getting into a little bit of housekeeping. So I'm still working on that little comic. And I've had some like some doubts there. Like the thing is, it sucks because it's like I wanted to try something new. And when I was doing some of the tests, like I really liked the way it was turning out. And then I went ahead and like, you know, I've storyboarded the whole thing. I was actually gonna just do it all analog, and I was trying to do it in this kind of like loose, pencil-y, like rough, sketchy kind of way. And it wasn't working. I needed to plan it out more, or like do it digital first and then copy. And then I realized like at that point, I don't know if you've ever made comics, you know, you can do it analog all by hand, or you can do it digital, or you can do a combo of both, which is normally what I do. I don't like to like storyboard or sketch out ideas on my iPad or digital. I like to do it with paper and just pencil. And I normally kind of like thumbnail stuff out, and then I bring it to like I do like the name. That's like in Japanese it's called the name, and that's just like the storyboard, where you're kind of like blocking everything out. You're like, it's like a rough draft on normally just like a piece of paper, right? And I did some like kind of thumbnail-y stuff like in this little like sketchbook that I have, like this size, and then took it to bigger paper, and essentially I realized like by the time I got through like 4, because it's only like 7 pages long, and by the time I got through like 4 or 5 pages, I realized like I'm essentially just doing like the rough draft with these pencils, because I tried to scan them in and like just bump up the contrast so it looks. I used like a 2B pencil, which is pretty dark. It's a pretty like full dark lead, but it's not dark enough. I was using like I was switching between like a colored pencil, like a thick like black colored pencil too, and I just wasn't liking the way the lines were looking, and I decided halfway through, like, okay, this will just essentially be like my storyboard, and then I'll bring this into my iPad. I like scanned all those pages and then brought it in my iPad, and that's what I'm working on now. Because I was always gonna do the coloring digitally. I thought about doing something where I would just like literally like a monocolor, like for example, like everything's red, but I use like black for all the lines and like the shading, because I really wanted it to have this like kind of like sketchy shading, almost like cross-hatching style, but not exactly. I don't know. I was having some difficulties with that, and I finished the first page. Like I went over, I like kind of a draft of the like what would a finalized first page would be, and I'm like kind of torn on whether I like it or not. But I really think I need to just like give it a keep trying to finish it. Since I like have everything basically laid out, and like all I gotta do essentially is like do the line, like the pen, the line work, and then color it. I do need to kind of like build out. There's a few pages where I left it really rough, so I have to do that. But yeah, without getting into too much detail on that, a little unsure, but I'm pretty sure I really just need to like finish it. And because sometimes you get to this point where you're in the middle of a project, and it is just best for you to drop it and like move on, or like come back to it, because you're just like, when there's a difference between forcing yourself to finish something and then like really forcing yourself to finish something you don't like, to the point where like the finished product is just not going to be very good. And I think I'm still on the line of like it's salvageable. Like I think it looks okay. I think I'm just kind of being hard on myself, and it's like a style I don't normally do, especially with the coloring. So I think it's a little challenging and a little like not what I'm exactly used to. I haven't done a comic in a long time too. But I really want to do this kind of little anthology series, so I need to just finish it, because that's what I told myself. I was like, just do this one. If you don't like it, you can change it up and change how you do things and stuff. So that's basically it for that. And I've already filmed so much of it too, like the process, because I want to make a little YouTube video out of it as well. And at this point, if I scrapped that too, I would lose the YouTube video as well, which is like gonna be one of maybe 2 videos I'm putting out in August. So yeah, these are the things that you have to think about when you also have a YouTube channel and you're trying to figure out what you want to put up on there. And the thing that kind of sucks, I was thinking about this a lot, the thing that kind of sucks about like being an artist and also wanting to make YouTube videos is, unless you're just making stuff like this where it's a podcast, where like I don't have to draw anything to make this podcast, right? But for like 99%, yeah, I mean, whatever, just outside of these podcasts for me specifically, everything else, like I have to create something in order to make a video out of it, right? So I mean, all I'm trying to say is like, unless it's like I'm not reacting to anything, I'm not like, it's not like a weird like a video essay or something. When the content on your channel revolves around the art that you make, obviously, like it goes without saying, you have to make a bunch of stuff in order to make videos. And it's just kind of hard, because like all of the normal steps that go into like editing and putting a video together and making that all that stuff is there, and then just on top of that you have all the work that you give yourself of like having to make the thing. So it's kind of a double doozy, because on top of making everything, right, I got to do the voiceover. I'm probably going to be on screen for some of it too, and then like some of the ones where I've like incorporated music elements as well, like it gets really, really involved, and you kind of don't realize how much goes into just making one YouTube video until you start making them. and especially when it's all dependent on the art that you're making. And then if you're not like really, loving the project, then it's gonna show, which is like what I was worried about. But I'm still like motivated to finish the comic and do the video. I'm just a little worried, like a little apprehensive. So I think that's okay. Obviously, if it gets to a point where it's like shit and I just don't like it, I'll have to scrap it, and it's just like, just go from there. That kind of thing happens too. So it's just one of those things where it's like, do you scrap it and move on because it's going to be better for you in the long run, or do you kind of just stick it out and just because that it's salvageable, right? That's kind of a thing that there's no black or white answer to. It's just something you have to learn how to deal with and what you're okay with putting up, because I'm really trying not to just like have a bunch of just 9 more Pokemon what if videos in a row before I put up another video. The thing is too, so that's it for the comic, and my goal is to have that video up towards the end of August. And I think I can do it. I have actually a lot of free time tomorrow, so I'm really gonna just try and knock it out. So I think that's part of it too. Is just when you're busy and you don't have time, you start to like worry about things unnecessarily. But yeah, so working on that, and so yeah, the video after that, I've been really itching to like start working on the Akira slide video that I want to make, which I've talked about before. Where it's like I'm gonna do my own OC, my own character doing the bike slide from Akira, the movie, the classic anime movie, where it kind of like comes from the frame and goes and does that. And I have some really cool ideas, and I'm like so excited actually to start working on that I was like, oh, I'll just scrap the comic and just work on that. But I need to just one step at a time. But that's what I'm working on. And besides that, this is the actual main kind of topic of this week's podcast that I want to talk about. Is one of the things, so if you've watched the past couple episodes, I've kind of been like doing some like soul searching as far as like trying to figure out kind of this art thing, and like I'm really trying to focus in on what the actual art that I want to make is, and then on top of that kind of figure out a smoother way of being able to maybe use that to help me make more YouTube videos, or like I was saying, instead of just making 100 Pokemon what if videos, like maybe having something else to kind of work around. And one of the things I was really thinking of is, because I started doing this with the Doodle Island animation, I have like 2 or 3 kind of like worlds that I like build in my head of just like universes that a lot of my characters exist in. And I was really excited to do Doodle Island and kind of push that story further and kind of like build like a actual continuing through line, and have characters being introduced and having it kind of like a story, not like a show, because I realized I wouldn't really be able to do that. But then even just doing that small little like teaser intro trailer animation, I realized like some of the limitations I was already gonna face, and I had to put it on hold, right? And I still I still have ideas that I want to work on with that. But one of the things I realized was just like just the like 2D animation aspect of like trying to do something like that, I knew wasn't going to be manageable. And so I've really been like looking for a way to kind of like a way to approach this kind of like world building thing that I want to do. And one of the things that I've kind of really been getting back into recently is Blender, and the software Blender. If you don't know, Blender is a free 3D software that is really awesome. You can do like professional level stuff. A lot of pros use it, and like people use it to like make assets for games and stuff like that. I don't know exactly what like all the top people use and how much Blender actually gets used by like big studios or anything, but Blender is really popular among especially like independent artists and people who want to kind of get their feet wet and jump into a 3D software. And I have actually I've been looking at Blender, I downloaded it. So this is the thing, is I downloaded it about a year ago, and I really wanted to try because, so I'll just like kind of, let's start from the beginning, right? Like there's this guy, his name's Dedouze on Instagram and just social media, and he's this French guy who's really sick, super awesome, like really multi-talented. This dude's a wizard. And the cool thing about Blender is, you obviously, like, if you just think of, like, if you're not really sure of like what I'm talking about, just think of like Toy Story, and think of like, if you've ever seen like a behind the scenes thing of Toy Story where it's just like the character and it's like boxes and it's like in the 3D space, or that episode of The Simpsons where Homer like gets a rip in the time space continuum and like goes through and it turns 3D on the other side. Like, think like that, where it's like, it's just a software where you're in 3D space and you like can move shapes around and like you can manipulate them, you can change them, you can do the lighting and stuff. So it really becomes this kind of like self-contained like atmosphere, this world that you can build within the program, and it's really crazy. And I've always liked it, but like I'm a 2D guy. Like, I really like 2D animation is probably my favorite medium of all time, like out of everything. And I would never want to just do 3D, or at least like that's still my sentiment, my feelings right now. But the thing is, this guy Dedouze, I don't know how to exactly say. He said, I've listened to him say his name, and it's like Dedouze. I think it's Dedouze. But it's spelled Dedouze. If you want to look it up, I'll try and have him up on the screen either earlier or like right now. His Instagram is awesome because the thing that he does. So that was my predicament, right? Is like, oh, this is cool. Like, I've noticed obviously 3D Pixar stuff is cool. Like The Incredibles. Up has really cool design language where it's like a little bit more boxy characters and stuff like that, and just some of the classics, some of the old like 3D kind of Pixar movies. I've always kind of liked that stuff, but 2D animation was my favorite. But then enter Dedouze and some of these other people who have been using this function in Blender. And the reason I am into Blender and not like Maya or some of the other ones is because Blender has this tool called Grease Pencil. And essentially what it does is like, if it allows you to draw on a plane. So like, imagine kind of like this like door behind me, but if it's just like a flat 2D plane within a 3D space. So like this, right? Where like you can move it forward and stuff. And you draw on here, and it can interact with like the 3D space, and it's really like a novel kind of thing where I'm not really sure too many other softwares that can even do that in the first place, or that have it as well developed as Blender. And seeing the stuff that Dedouze did was just so cool. It's hard to explain. I'll see if I can just get a GIF or something on here without like using too much of his stuff without his permission. But just to show you guys, because I really want to give him a shout out, because this dude is essentially the first person that turned me on to like the possibilities of Blender with 2D and 3D mixed. Obviously this is not the first time I've seen like 2D and 3D mixed, but like to give you the way I was thinking of it is like, traditionally 2D and 3D don't always really go that well together, because, for example, if you're watching an anime, especially a lot nowadays, right, where it's gotten so much better, you can definitely tell. And like, think of, I don't know if you've ever seen like the old Ghost in the Shell anime, not the movie, like not the original movie is just amazing. I'm talking about like, it aired on like Adult Swim. I forgot what it's called, like Ghost Protocol or something. Where like they use these, or think of like, oh my god, even on Cartoon Network there was like, like the green people, and like, just think of like really clunky 3D kind of like assets that don't look like they belong there, and then like 2D kind of animation on top. It's the 2D 3D mix has been synonymous with like fans and lovers of animation kind of always being like kind of being turned off by it, or like when you use a crowd of 3D characters walking, like say it's a high school shot, like it's a scene in an anime and it's a high school morning, and there's a bunch of people, there's a mob of characters. You just use the 3D assets because it's easier and saves more time, so you don't like animating 30 people walking simultaneously in a 2D shot is ridiculous. It's a ridiculous amount of work. If you want to know like how crazy it is, watch The Wind Rises and go watch the scenes at the beginning when the earthquake happens, and before that when there's just it's a packed train going through Tokyo or whatever, right? The Kanto region. And there's like 30 or 40 characters all like moving their luggage and like moving around and stuff. It's crazy. So there's obvious reasons why they're using the 3D. It's to make things easier, and it's to make it so that they can get the show out on time, right? But the thing is like normally it doesn't really work that well. It's always been very jarring or like very obvious. It's like, I've said this before, I've used this example before, but not for this, but like the old Scooby-Doo cartoons, when you had hand-painted backgrounds and they're drawing the cells on top of them, and they're probably hand-painting the cells back then too, like old school traditional style. And you see a bookshelf, and one of the books is just like way more saturated and pops out than all the other ones, and that's because that was left blank and then like painted over on top of that was the one that's being animated. It's funny because you see a bookshelf with that book and you're like, that he's probably gonna go grab that book. Like even when I was a kid, I could kind of see these things, right? And that one's not too bad. It's not as obvious, but it's still a little bit jarring, right? So like my whole point is like, this was always my apprehension of like my aversion to mixing 2D and 3D, is because when you're using 3D to try and be as realistic as possible, and like to, how do I say it like the way I want, like when it's trying to be realistic and it's trying to kind of like supplement, it's not actually the real thing. It's never as good as the actual hand-drawn thing. Like when you're trying to replace 2D animation with 3D, that's when it doesn't really work. And it's gotten so much better, right? Like one of the producers from Studio Orange, which is the studio that made like the Beastars anime and the new Trigun anime, he was on Trash Taste, the podcast, and it's great because he can speak English and Japanese. That's why they had him on. But he's a Japanese guy. I think he lived in California for a while when he was growing up, and like he was explaining a lot of what, you know, just the industry standards are today, and like they're pretty well respected among the animation industry for like being very, very careful about how they use 3D and like the way they use it. And you know, it's getting to a point where it's like it's using certain styles and like the way you stylize it and render it, it's like it's becoming its own thing, which is really cool. It's not just like a replacement for 2D animation anymore. It's becoming its own like 3D self version of like 2D animation, if that makes sense. Because on the one hand, you have stuff like Pixar and these like, it's just 3D for 3D's sake, right? Like it's a 3D animated movie, which is cool, that's great. But when the 2D, 3D worlds were kind of like really tightly mixed and stuff, like that's when it wasn't as appealing, it was too jarring, etc. So I know that's a very long-winded way of kind of like explaining why I didn't like it in the past, but I think it's really important to make this distinction, because what some people are doing now, like Dedouze, he's like, you'll have seen hopefully from what I've been able to show you guys, but like just the way he mixes the elements of 2D and 3D, where it's like a lot of the time you can't really even tell that a lot of the stuff is 3D, and a lot of the elements, the assets that are 3D, he like will draw on top of, like even if it's just like an outline or a line or like a little detail line, because that line gives off this like impression that it was also hand drawn, which is really cool. And it just, the thing is like he cracked the code. He cracked the code with this style, because he does, essentially it's like a very it's like a very simplified kind of like it's a kind of like an anime style, but like a simplified, like imagine it's god damn, this is kind of hard to explain, but you could like a simplified Ghibli style that's a little bit closer to like a cartoon, American Western cartoon style, then mixed color palette wise, like very vibrant and like cell shading, where it's just like the flats and then like the shadow or a highlight, right? So like at max you have like 3 kind of different things going on at once, and the way he just puts it all together is beautiful. It's really, really awesome. And I've been a fan of his for a couple years now, because at first I didn't even really know. Like, you just see some of the stuff he does, and he does like these like simple looped animations, which of course like that's one of my favorite things to do, so I gravitated towards that. He's very inspired by like anime and a lot of Ghibli stuff, so like me and this guy, I feel like we would click. I would love to meet him someday, or like have him on the podcast. That would be amazing. But yeah, so like seeing the stuff that he was doing kind of like opened my eyes, like, okay, you can do stuff like this too. Like, awesome. I never knew that. And for a while it was just something cool that I appreciated, right? And then last year, like I was saying, so getting closer to where we're at with me with this, I downloaded Blender last year and was kind of like messing around with grease pencil just a little bit. But the thing is, like, I didn't have as nice of a setup as I do right now, where like I had a used like Wacom tablet, but it was kind of clunky to set up, and I didn't have like a dedicated spot for it. Like, I have like the monitor arm kind of thing here. Yeah, you can't see it, but you know, I can just my pen tablet is right here. I can just swivel it over and I can start using it. It's already connected to the computer at all times. It's ready to go. I didn't have that kind of a setup, because if you are going to use grease pencil, like, you need a pen, you need a pen tablet and stuff, right? You can use the ones that are just like where you look up at the screen, but I can't do that. I need to be looking at the one-to-one, like drawing onto the screen. Because you know, if you're just doing 3D stuff, if you're just mocking up things, or like, you know, sculpting or modeling characters and stuff, like I think you can get away with a mouse, you know, up to a certain point, like just using a mouse. But so there were a few kind of like limiting things, and I wasn't sure if my computer would be able to handle it, and I didn't really know what I wanted to do, right? And I kind of dropped it, right? And it's like I didn't know where to start. I was just kind of messing around in the software, and I just had it on my laptop too. Didn't even have it on my desktop, and I was just kind of messing around. I was like, oh, this is cool. I'll come back to it later. Like I'll come back to it in a month or two. And then I like moved, and all this stuff happened, and then that's also, you know, leading up to me starting this, and then just getting busy, and I was really honing my own style of like the way I like to draw and the way I like to just animate. It's just solely 2D. And you know, one thing after another, I forget about Blender. And then cut to maybe 2 or 3 months ago, I started finding more people. I do want to give some extra shout outs. I will try my best to put them up on screen too, but I may forget or not see it while I'm editing, so apologies if that happens. One is Brawler's World. So there's this kind of like niche genre of like people using Blender and 3D softwares where they're kind of like, it's really inspiring too. A lot of them seem pretty young. It's kind of crazy. Brawler's World is essentially like this person who's just creating this like universe using Blender. Like, they have a bunch of different characters. They all kind of like have a storyline, the backstory kind of stuff, and then he also makes like little animations. It kind of looks like little cutscenes. If you could imagine like you're playing a video game and a little cutscene of like this person and like their personality, and then or like a really dramatic kind of like crazy scene. And it's crazy because I didn't even know if that person was working in Blender, but they are. I saw they mentioned it on one of their posts, and I was like, geez, I'm like, god damn, I don't know how they're doing. I'm assuming they're doing most of it in Blender. Might be doing some of the editing and stuff of the actual animation outside of Blender. Obviously, like, I know like cutting it together and stuff, you're using a video editor, but some compositing or extra stuff might be done outside of Blender. But the fact that it's mostly, or if not all, Blender is kind of crazy. And you just start to like notice things. You're like, oh, okay, maybe this person's using Blender too. Oh, and this person. So like Brawler's World, there's another person. Shit, his name's Bryson McBee, I think. Want to give them a shout out. They do super sick, like just really simple, kind of like cool, cutesy, like character designs and stuff. Like right now they've been doing a lot of like Zelda and Mario, where it'll be like they do some animating too. I mean, it's like mostly animation stuff, right? But he also has like little stickers that he makes, and go check out his stuff too, because if you like Super Mario or Zelda or whatever, like one of them was like the light dragon from Zelda Tears of the Kingdom, and it had like, it's like a really cool, like simplified kind of cute style, and like I think it had like the clouds like moving. It was like a little, it's just like a little shot of the character of like the dragon, and like, or some of the Mario characters like interacting. One of them was really sick. It was like the Squirtle Squad from Pokemon, and they were on the beach, and they built a sandcastle, and it's like, I just started realizing like, holy shit, you can just build these little worlds. Because the thing that was kind of like, that just wasn't there for me with like going back to the Doodle Island animation, like I was saying, when you're working only in 2D, you have to redraw things all the time, right? Because like I had a shot of the island, and it's from like, far away, and then when they get closer, you have to show a different perspective of it, you have to show a different spot of it, and it's like, there are things where it's just like, it starts to feel like hard to keep things consistent, and on top of that, you have to also then be thinking about like camera movements and like how you're going to be showing things. And the cool thing about Blender is some of those elements, like if you don't mind them being 3D, you can create an asset essentially, which is just going to be like a reusable asset that you can reuse, or like, not even if it's something that you want to reuse a lot, where it's just like, okay, here's this thing that I created, and in just for this project, you can reuse it however you want, because you're like in the 3D space, you have a camera that's shooting, and it's just the possibilities are like pretty much endless. It's really crazy. And then on top of that, so that would like kind of fix not fix, I don't want to say any of this is fixing. This is just something I've really become inspired by in the last few months, and I'm finally taking action to learn it myself. None of this is like a magic pill where it's like, if I learn Blender, all of a sudden all of my like artistic struggles will be gone, right? That is not what I'm trying to say at all. But it does allow me to think like in a different gear. It's really crazy. And yeah, you can just get inspired about different things, and you can start thinking about things differently. And I just love the idea of like kind of being able to set up some things in a 3D space, and then have the cool stylized way of essentially just like drawing over it and animating over it. And especially now, because one of the things I did want to mention is like, in the past, even just in the past year, it has become so much easier to use as like a person who wants to get into Blender and like 3D. Like there are so many tutorials on YouTube, like good ones, where it's just like, I literally have been like I've been working on like my daily translating work and stuff, the typesetting, and I will just put on like a tutorial that's way above my like skill level, just to start learning the program more and like seeing how they do it. And it's starting to just like seep into what I'm doing as well, which is really crazy. But just want to, this whole preface of me talking about it and like explaining how I'm able to like have had this kind of paradigm shift, I want to kind of like tie it all together, right? Because one of the cool things is like you can do really cool like kind of like toon shading and stuff too. They even have like kind of a watercolory kind of shader and stuff now that you can do. Like I think the reason I'm so excited and now motivated to learn it is seeing some of the advancements, even like really recent advancements, where it's like, this is the style that, because Dedouze has a really awesome style, but I don't want to do it exactly like him. I have my own kind of things that I want to try, and things that I've imagined in my head. Like I can see now from seeing examples of like, oh, I'm put this together, and like what is possible now is like meshes with what I actually want to make or want to try and make. So the stars have aligned, and I've seen this path of like, oh, this is cool. This is something I really want to try. And the reason I really wanted to talk about this as well is because I've been learning Blender for the past week, and it's been hard as fuck. Like, so hard. It's, oh my god. If you've never tried to learn a 3D software, like, bro, holy shit, okay? And if you are a Blender head out there, or you do fuck around with 3D softwares, shout the fuck out to you. Because goddamn, I have so much more respect for anyone who works in 3D. I don't care what it is you do. If you know how to like navigate around the software, fucking shouts out to you, man. Because here's the thing too, is like back in middle school, I think, which this is so awesome. I can't believe we actually were able to do this. But back in middle school, we learned like Flash and Maya. I learned like rudimentary Flash animation and Maya in middle school as like one of my electives. And I don't know how that was like, I think maybe it was, sorry, I think it was high school. Sorry, yeah, that was high school. We did learn some other stuff in middle school, but high school, one of my electives, I don't even remember what the actual elective was, but I think it was just like computer class or something. But dude, so okay, I'm learning Maya when I'm like 14, 15, but we're doing really simple stuff like make a street lamp and put a light behind it, or like, you know, build a box and like light it, and like really rudimentary stuff. And I remember the software. It was cool. I love like getting like even just learning something for a few months. It seeps into like your like skill pool, because this would come back too. I've learned through doing music school as well. Like you learn a lot of because in Blender and a lot of these compositing softwares for anything, for audio or visual, you use these things called nodes, and essentially you're like constructing. I'll try and simplify this as much as I can because I'm still very new at this as well. But it's like you're hooking a bunch of boxes up together that like get the desired effect that you want, and it can be as simple or complicated as you want to make it. But you're making all these connections, and it's really crazy. It's almost like your own like little mini circuit board that's going on. And I've messed with those in other softwares a little bit, just kind of here and there. I did a lot of like audio engineering and stuff back in the day as well, learning about MIDI and like all the stuff that goes into electronic music, as far as like literally digital electronic music and audio engineering and audio electronics and everything like that. So I've had these little things that like when I see something, it's like, oh, okay, I'm not comfortable with this, but I'm somewhat familiar with it, right? So at least I had that going in, right? But the thing is too, is like drawing softwares are really intuitive. Photoshop is very similar to GIMP, is very similar to Clip Studio Paint, is very similar to Procreate. It's all based around the same function language. I don't know if that's actually a term, but like the language of the program is like, you know, create a new layer. These are your blending modes. If you want to lower the opacity, there's a slider. This is how you do this. This is how you do that. Everything, there's a universal language in all of those softwares. And I know there's a universal language in the 3D softwares, but if you're all coming from a 2D software going to 3D, it's going to seem like you have no clue what the hell you're doing. And that's exactly what it was for me. So I started learning. I was like, okay, I'm super inspired right now, and I just want to start making stuff. So, but I know better. I gave myself like one session where I just messed around, did whatever, tried to like skip ahead to some tutorials that would help me make the thing. What I want to make first, my first project is I want to make a little lantern and animate some stuff going around it, or like animate the lights, or like some petals falling in front of it, or like a little ghost yokai thing coming in and out. Not really 100% sure, but I couldn't skip ahead and do that. I was like, I have no clue what the hell I'm doing. I need to like start at the basics. And this is something I've learned just from, it's true for music and drawing, and it's like you need to learn, you need to know when you need to like stop and just like, okay, and I gotta go back. Like you have to learn at least a little bit of the basics, right? Like even if it's like a piano, and it's like you may not be able to read music, but you at least need to know like the notes of the piano, right? Or like maybe a few, like guitar, like you gotta know a few chords. You have to have some kind of rudimentary knowledge. Otherwise you're probably just gonna give up and get frustrated. And this learning blender, frustrated has been a word this week. That's the word of the week: frustration. Followed by like more frustration, followed by like wanting to fucking yeet my computer out the window, and then you get something to work and you're like, I'm on top of the world, baby. So there's a lot of ups and downs, right? It's been a lot of highs and a lot of lows this past week. And one of the classic kind of like tutorials, the most recommended one for Blender, one of them is this donut tutorial by the Blender Guru on YouTube. Super awesome guy. He's incredibly knowledgeable and really, really solid, good tutorial. There's only a few parts where it's ever like, oh, I wish he had kind of explained this or done this more not slowly, but like I wish he had shown me what he's doing there, because I had to like kind of figure out a few things. But I'm almost finished too. I might, if it's finished by the time this comes out, I'll show my donut on here if I can. But yeah, it's like I'm learning the basics, and it's incredibly hard. But you know what? After like the first like 2 days, I already had like, cause dude, you feel like a newborn fawn with their legs just like doing this. Like you don't like even just moving around the 3D space is hard to figure out the controls. And but like, dude, shouts out to like just, I don't know, like having that experience back in the past, I think, and just being kind of a very like technologically savvy kid growing up, to a certain extent, right? Where I've messed around with a lot of softwares and a lot of programs and stuff, and you just start to pick it up, right? If you're an artist and you work in a lot of softwares, it's really hard at first, but you just start to pick it up. And I started to get used to things, and it was awesome. And I was like, holy shit, this is really cool, and I have to like stay strong. And I was like, I got halfway through the donut tutorial, and I was like, I kind of think I know enough how to like, and I could just start making my own stuff. I was like, no, stop, just go through the tutorial. Because I've already looked at a bunch of other tutorials, right? And I kind of already even know like the next things that I want to try. So I'm gonna do some other like easy beginner stuff after this, but I think I'm about at the level where I can start making some really, really simple kind of like creations of my own, right? And that's so exciting, and I'm so happy, and I'm really, really excited to start, because I have some like if this works out the way I think, like the way I want it to, and if I am able to stay just inspired like on this route of like having this kind of this way to make a certain type of art for build out some of these worlds that I want to, it will definitely become like a huge part of my workflow, a huge part of like what I use, I think. So I'm really hoping things go well. I'm a week into using this thing, so like who knows, this could be that kind of like new software honeymoon period, when it's like, oh my god, this is so cool. It's like when you get a new pen or a new drawing tool, or like you're really inspired to make something, but then a week later it's like, I'm just gonna go back to what I've always used. So I don't know, who knows, I might I don't want to say anything for sure and just like kind of build this up to be this like huge thing, but it's really, really motivating and really inspiring. And it does suck that like I'm spending all this time just like learning the software. I'm not even able to create much right now, and like it's putting my comic on the back burner, the YouTube stuff on the back burner. But it's perfect, because this is what I needed. I was already going to take a little bit of a break and not go as hard on just cranking out videos and stuff. And what better way to kind of like reinvigorate your creative passion than to learn a new skill, and especially a new software that's like, the beautiful thing is it's like it already has animation incorporated into it, and now it's just like I get to just try out this really fun new medium where like, hey, even if I don't end up even if I'm not able to like make the thing I want to make, I'm still gonna make some cool stuff along the way, and like just getting better at it. And like it's hard to contain myself, because I have a lot of really cool ideas, and I have some like kind of like old animations and old artwork that I kind of think I can like redo in this like kind of 2D 3D style. One of them, I'll just say, is the backgrounds I made for my friends at the ramen bowl. There's a few where it's just like, oh man, I think I could make a really cool scene out of that, and like have mostly still just the 2D animated elements, but have some of the things that I think were lacking a little bit more. I'm not the best background artist, you know, I'm not a very good environment background artist. So like being able to do that, to kind of help, which is obviously, this is the intention, right? This is what they use 3D for in a lot of shows and stuff. But when you're able to just like use it exactly how you want, and it's not just because you're doing budget cuts and you can stylize it the way you want, that's when I think it can actually become more of like the actual art, and it's not just like a really shitty 3D rendered bookshelf that's sitting in the background of a classroom because they didn't have the time or money to pay an animator to actually animate it, right? So for all the shit I may have given 3D, like I am seeing more of the actual like cool artistic stylized way that it can be used to in a way that I personally enjoy, right? Because some people like 3D and all that kind of stuff, super cool. I've always had an aversion to it, but now seeing this kind of like this way of doing it, really inspired, really motivated. And the reason I wanted to tell my story about starting and learning Blender this week is because this the whole bigger picture of like learning a new skill, or just sitting down and learning something or studying something that you have never tried, or is just like, you know, a new branch of something you may already be familiar with. It's so powerful and so important. And like, yeah, everyone knows, right? They say like, you know, learning, and like if you never stop learning, and like if you keep studying things and learning new things, it's like even just like cognitive function increases, and like, you know, it helps you stay kind of like fit and healthy and happy, like learning new things. Like people need challenges, right? But man, when you haven't done something like that in a while, and you go out there and you start learning a new software, or you start learning a new hobby, or you just start learning a new skill, and it's something that's hard and it's challenging. Learning Blender was very frustrating for me, and it's very frustrating for me just being at the beginning stage right now. But like I said, when you do one of those small things and like it clicks and it works, you're just like, oh, that's awesome. Like, oh my God, I can't believe it's working. And especially when you have this kind of like this bigger goal in mind that's kind of like off in the distance, and you know you're working your way towards that, like that's when it really just like all comes together. But not even just that, right? It doesn't need to be a new software or like something that you think is gonna just make your art better. Like just learning a new skill or challenging yourself in some way, I think is really, really important. And I've seen it firsthand. Like I said, like I haven't really learned a new skill or like gotten a new hobby or anything in a while that I can kind of just think of right now. And I think the last time I did it was I learned like some elementary like coding and programming stuff during COVID, because I was kind of thinking about possibly trying to pursue that kind of a career, and I didn't keep up with it because I realized it was just something that I wasn't really passionate about. And but you know, it was cool because I learned like HTML and like some CSS. Oh my God, sorry, I fucking forgot. But you know, like some elementary skills where you could like kind of just like mock up a website. I started learning some JavaScript stuff, but I didn't get very far. But it's a cool little skill, right? And it was hard because I was sitting down, I was working, coming home. That was when I was just teaching English too. I was working, coming home, and then like, you know, 8:30 p.m. eat dinner and like watch this like tutorial, or I bought like a course on it and stuff too, right? Same for studying Japanese. I love learning languages, and like learning and studying Japanese has been huge because it's just like something you're always thinking about. Especially for me, I'm very visual, so I'm always thinking of like the words or like the kanji and like skills for that, and like you got to study, and just keeping up with little things like that here and there, even if it's just, hey, I'm studying 10 minutes a day, I'm using Duolingo or something like that. Like whatever it is, if you can, you know, you don't need the new year to set a new resolution or a goal, right? So one thing you could do, because it's August, so you can make a goal by the end of the year, right? Because that's my goal actually, is by the end of the year I want to be able to create some of these scenes and these little world kind of environments that am imagining right now on a simple basic level, but I want it to be at least somewhat cool, stylized, detailed amount, and I want to be able to make that kind of stuff before the end of the year, so that I can be like already kind of on the path of making more stuff like that, or just figuring out more of what I want to make just in general. But that is at least one of the goals that I have for myself, and it's gonna keep me on my toes, and it's gonna keep me learning and creating. And when you can find something, because it's hard to just like force yourself to do something if you're not like invested or passionate about it, right? If you don't care about Japan or like learning Japanese, then I would not recommend like studying Japanese, right? That's why people don't like math and stuff like that, right? But find something that's either something you're really passionate about or passionate adjacent, like something that you're kind of like, I've thought about like quilting before, but I've never actually tried. Maybe I'll just try it. It's all low stakes, man. That's the thing. Just try it for a little while. Give yourself a week. That's what I did. Like Blender, I was like, you're feeling inspired. This is just like a honeymoon phase of like feeling inspired about this. Once you start learning the software, it's going to get a lot harder. So like give yourself a week, and if you're still motivated, then continue and go for it. And it's been a week, and I'm even more motivated and probably a little bit further along than I thought I was even going to be. So that's really great. I've just been immersing myself in it with tutorials and practicing at night after finishing work and stuff like that. And if you can just find something like that, right? Find something that is just something you've always wanted to try, or just like, even if it's just something really small, low stakes, but you think you have some curiosity about it, give it a try. Do some studying, do some learning, learn those new skills, because I'm going to keep working on Blender. And also, real quick, I kind of forgot to mention this, but Blender is a free software. It's a free program, and I will be contributing some money. I wanted to kind of test it out, make sure it was something I would use. If you are lucky enough to like find something like Blender where it is a free software and like it's run by very passionate creators and developers, please support them in what they're doing. Or if you find people who do tutorials on YouTube and they have assets or things that you want to buy, support them as well. Because when you support the developers for something like that, they could be charging money. They could be fucking Adobe, right? I don't have any like reverence or respect for like the actual people who work on the software at Adobe. And I know that sounds really fucked up, because it's really not even their fault anyways. But I don't know. I don't know. The way their system works is like I'm not very happy to give them money for things, right? But for Blender, I'm willing to I really like what they're doing. The software is amazing, and in order for it to keep continuing and for me to use it, I want to give them money. And then you see all these people who are giving out awesome tutorials and have like little like toon shader packs. They have add-ons. They have little assets that you can buy. Like, support those people too. And if you want to and you have the money, like buy some of their stuff. And like just it really helps keep the community going. And because if the more Blenders you have in the world, the less Adobe and some of those software companies can just monopolize everything and charge you whatever the fuck they want, because it's the industry standard, right? So that's my last little soapbox tangent, but it's really, really important. So please support those people doing that kind of stuff, and just go have fun, learn some new skills. That's my advice for this week. I'll update you guys next week on how Blender is going, but that's going to be it for today. And thank you, as always, for watching and listening, and I'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.